countries and nationalities. We also have local and regional chapters in many parts of the world. So we have, for instance, ISIP Arabic, where we do lectures twice a month in Arabic. We have ISIP India and ISIP Pakistan, where we do lectures in Urdu and other languages. We're about to establish ISIP Turkey, where we do lectures in Turkish. We have ISIP Indonesia, where we once a month do lectures in Bahasa Indonesian. And we're having our regional chapter in Southern Africa. We're about to start our regional chapter in Australia and New Zealand and West Africa, because we have a lot of members from Nigeria and Gambia and Senegal and Uganda and other West African countries. We're about to establish our chapter in East Europe, which includes Bosnia and Kosovo and Albania. We're also about to start our North American chapter, our UK chapter, and we also have a Malaysian chapter, ISIP Malaysia, and ISIP Singapore, and ISIP Bangladesh is about to be established as well. So if you all guys are from different countries and you're interested to establish ISIP's local regional chapters, please contact us, and it will be an honor if you would like to join us in this mission, inshallah. We aim to disseminate knowledge, share resources, and discuss best practices in a free and accessible manner. And we want to be a platform to enable further development of people's personal and professional interests, studies, and understanding of Islamic psychology within their communities and countries of origin. Ways to contribute to participate. Feel free to subscribe to ISIP's YouTube channel. We have a lot of great lectures there. There's a lot of gems in English and Arabic and Urdu and Bahasa Indonesian. So please feel free. You can join our Islamic Psychology WhatsApp group. We will share the link with you in the Zoom chat, and we will also share the link to our YouTube channel in our Zoom chat, in the Zoom chat, so please subscribe. And we will also send an email to all of you with a recording as well, and also an email where we will share a Google form. If you're interested to join the ISIP movement, you can register yourself, and we will be more than honored to welcome you to the ISIP movement and organization, inshallah. And in the future, we will also soon release our website where you can register yourself to become a member. You can add yourself to our newsletter. We also soon will release our Islamic Psychology digital library with thousands of resources within the field of Islamic psychology, free of charge for all of our members as well. So these are some of the things that we will soon release, inshallah, by the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. The feedback form we will also share in the end of the lecture in the Zoom chat, and please feel free to just answer some of the questions, because your feedback and your nasiha is a big benefit for us as we're planning our lectures for upcoming times. We also want to give all of you who are participating in this lecture today, all of our great brothers and sisters and colleagues, a certification of appreciation from the ISIP team. So this is our way of thanking you for being part of this movement and for wanting to learn and disseminate the sacred knowledge of Islamic psychology. Barakallahu feekum. Upcoming sessions, and please save the dates. So Sunday, December the 12th, as I mentioned before, dear excellent brothers and sisters, we have twice a month lectures in English. So next lecturer will be Dr. Fatima bint Abdullah from Malaysia. She's an associate professor at IIUM, the International Islamic University of Malaysia, in the Faculty of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences. She's also the advisory board member of the ISIP, International Students of Islamic Psychology. And the topic that she will lecture about is about spirituality in the contemporary world, Islamic spirituality versus secularized spirituality. So this is Sunday, the 12th of December at 11:30 a.m. GMT. We will also share the registration link in our WhatsApp groups, and also we will email it to all of you. So please save the date. And also in the end of December, we will have a lecture with Professor Süleyman Derin from Turkey about the psychology of the prophets, which is an amazing topic. And in the beginning of January, we will have a lecture with Dr. Rania Webb from US, which is also an honor to host her as well. So welcome to join all of these lectures, inshallah. So let us present today's lecturer. It's such an honor to have you with us, Dr. Naveed Iqbal. Dr. Naveed is a professor in psychology, over 10 years at Jamia Millia Islamia University in Delhi. His specialization is in clinical and health psychology. He's also advisory board member of ISIP, and we're very honored to have him with us. He's also a member of the Al-Balkhi Institute, which is a sibling entity of ISIP. It's an honor to have you with us. He has masters from California and has supervised and graduated over 20 PhD students. He's the author and editor of over 70 published works, including Psychological Issues and Interventions in Health and Well-Being from 2016. And there is a lot of more things to say about the Ustad Naveed Iqbal. So feel free to introduce yourself, Ustad, and please forgive us if we forgot to mention anything. And this is also a certificate for you, Ustad Naveed Iqbal. We from the ISIP movement and organization want to show our appreciation for you taking your time and being so generous with your time and knowledge. So this is a certificate of appreciation from us for your time and for your efforts and recognition of your continuing excellency in the field of Islamic psychology. And this we will send to you personally as an email as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Naveed. And without any further ado, let me just stop sharing my screen and let me welcome you, Ustad Naveed Iqbal. The floor is yours, and please, dear brothers and sisters, let's give digital applause and digital welcoming to Dr. Naveed Iqbal. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, brother, for your kind words. Assalamu alaikum, all of you. First of all, I extend my thanks to Brother Jamaluddin, who has given me this opportunity to share my view with you all. I'll be speaking on Islamic psychology, emergence and current challenges. So first, let me share my screen, then I will continue. So, is it visible?
Yes, doctor, it's we see it. Jazakallah khair.
So, because we live in a country where Muslims are in minority. So one question is often asked, when there is a mainstream psychology, why do we need Islamic psychology? So this question is often asked. So from that perspective, we have written that paper. In fact, there was one problem which we had encountered. In 2016, in Delhi, India, we had also founded one Indian Council on Islamic Perspective to Psychology. So again, we have encountered this problem. So by the grace of Allah, we were able to give justification. Why do we need Islamic psychology when mainstream or scientific psychology is available? Moreover, mainstream psychology is also useful and it has application in wide range of fields, in clinical psychology and so many other areas. So after that, why do we need Islamic psychology? So in order to answer that question, I have started from mainstream psychology. No doubt, mainstream psychology is very useful, but despite that, when we study this discipline at deeper level, then we find that it has some limitations. So before that, let me discuss the background, because when psychology was evolving as an independent discipline during late 19th century, 1880s onward, that time most of the subjects in psychology, or when we can say even in the early part of 20th century, most of the subjects in psychology were white, middle class, college going students. Findings obtained from them were applied universally. Why it was applied universally? Because is there any gender difference, ethnic difference, cultural difference? They were all disregarded. Why they were disregarded? Because that time psychology was using the approach of positivism, and there was a lot of focus on objectivity and scientific knowledge, because they assume that all these differences, whether it is related to gender, culture, and so on, they are of minor significance. After all, we are developing something which is scientific or which is objective. We are developing a body of knowledge which is scientific and objective. But gradually, psychologists, and remember, Western psychologists themselves, gradually Western psychologists themselves realized that mainstream psychology have some limitation. The first limitation which they have pointed out, that most of the theories of so-called mainstream psychology or scientific psychology are based on the values and cultural context of Western Europe and North American countries. So therefore, their generalization is questionable, because before that there were so many other background also. There were so many events also, because Freud's concept of Oedipus concept was not found in some of the tribal people. So after that, it was realized that some of the concept of mainstream psychology do not have universal application. Rather, it reflects the values and cultural context of Western Europe and North American countries. Second important limitation, we can say that mainstream psychology had ignored contextual factors, meaning making, and perspective of the subjects in understanding reality. So it was the second limitation. Third limitation was it had ignored the voices of the minority and marginalized groups. And the last, we can say most important, where we find the link of developing Islamic psychology, that it was based on a positivist approach. Although in principle, they say that we adopt the instance of scientific naturalism or agnosticism. But in practice, we can say it is based on materialist thought. As a result, spirituality or spiritual nature of man was completely ignored. So in view of this limitation, in the Western psychology itself, some alternative views have started developing. So these are some of the views. So we can say that cross-cultural psychology, cultural psychology, and indigenous psychology tried to make psychology culturally relevant. So these are some of the trends which try to incorporate cultural factors. Next, we can say constructive approach, interpretive approach. They have started taking into consideration contextual factor and perspective of the participants. Next, feminist approach, Marxist approach. They have started giving voice to the marginalized groups. And transpersonal psychology and other religion-based approaches, including Islamic psychology, they have started incorporating the spiritual nature and transcendental aspects of human beings. So we can say Islamic psychology is one of them, which is taking into account the spiritual factors and transcendental aspects of human beings. Before discussing about Islamic psychology, let me discuss about the view of psychologists regarding the religion, traditional view, and what is the current situation. So traditionally, what I have found that there were two groups in psychology which held two opposite view about religion. One view was led by, we can say that there were some supporters such as Sigmund Freud, Skinner, and Alice. They were the main advocate, which have presented religion very negatively. And Freud has equated it with poor mental health. Second group, we can say, they were those who held positive view. And interestingly, they were large in numbers. William James, Jung, Allport, McDougall, Erickson, and so many other psychologists. There is one more interesting thing. There were two opposite views regarding religion of Freud and Jung. Freud held the view that those who were religious, they had underlying abnormality, or in other words, they have poor mental health. On the other hand, Jung held the view that those who are not able to find religious outlook in their later part of life. So those who are aware with the writing of Jung, in his writing, Jung has talked about first part of life. First part of life means before the age of 35. And second part of life. Second part of life means after the age of 35 plus. So Jung had said that those who are not able to find a religious outlook in their later part of life. Later part of life means those who are in 35 plus age. They are more likely to develop psychological problem. I repeat once again, Freud says that those who are religious, they have underlying abnormality. On the other hand, Jung held the view that those who are not able to find religious outlook in their later part of life, second part of life, they are more likely to develop psychological problem. So despite having so many psychologists holding positive view for religion, unfortunately, mainstream psychology remained negative, antagonistic, or anti-religious as late as 1990s, or we can say safely as late as 1980s. In support of my argument, I would like to quote two surveys. One survey was published by the name of Politics in the year 1991. It was published in USA. In fact, the survey was conducted during 1980s. It was about the religious preferences among USA academician, American academician. Interestingly, in this survey, psychologists were found to be least religious. So when psychologists were asked, do you have any choice of religion? Only 50% had said, yes, we have choice for religion. We have current choice for religion. On the other hand, when general population were asked, 90% of the population had said, yes, they had a choice of the religion. Only 10% said that they did not have any choice of religion. Next survey was conducted by Bargain and Jensen in 1990. It was on the psychotherapy provider group, clinical psychologists, social psychiatric, social workers, psychiatrists, and so on. So in this survey, question asked was different. So these all mental health provider were asked whether religion has any influence on your lives or not. Interestingly, only 33% of clinical psychologists said that religion has influence on their lives. On the other hand, when the same question were asked by the general population, 72% have said that religion influenced their life. So in other survey, which I have not mentioned here, even among scientists, roughly we can say that general population, if they ask the question whether you believe in higher power or God, during the survey which were conducted during 1990s, so it was around 80%. When all these so-called academicians were asked, including scientists, physicists were the exception, I think it was close to 60%, between 60 to 70. I'm giving a rough estimate. When psychologists were asked, 50%, and clinical psychologists, they have said only 33% had said that religion has any influence on their lives. So it means there is something in psychology discipline which were making people anti-religious in the beginning. I'm not saying today. I will also discuss about the current situation, why that view has changed now. So I repeat once again, although we can say that those who were educated, the percentage of the people believing in higher power or God, the percentage was less. But unfortunately, psychologists were found to be least religious in these two survey. In one more separate survey, physicists were the lowest who believe in religion or higher power or God. So now the question arises, why traditionally psychologists were anti-religious? Let me briefly discuss about it, because I think it is important. We need to understand that, because still there are some people, I meet them, they hold very negative view of religion without understanding why, and they don't know why negative view was propagated. So therefore, briefly, I would like to explain that. According to one explanation which was given by Qutb in 1999, it was based on the view of Sayyid Qutb's brother Muhammad Qutb. He had written one book, Islam and Modern Materialist Thought. So because I don't know Arabic, English version I could get, and I read the English version. And in English version, the year was given 1992. It was written by the Muhammad Qutb. So according to Muhammad Qutb, one of the reason was the clash between science and church. Because we all know, after Renaissance, especially in Europe, there was a clash between science and church, and ultimately in that conflict, science became victorious. After that, all religion were considered as being backward, regressive, and superstitious. And this is one of the most widely held view or explanation for giving the negative view of religion. But there are some other authors such as Brook 1991, Barber 1990, and 1998. They have said that there was not always clash between science and church. So according to them, the relationship between science and church was not singular. Singular means it was not always of conflict. Sometimes they have also collaborated, and sometimes there was some independence also. Such type of view have been also proposed. So those who have experience, they can further study these writers, Brook 1991, Barber 1919, and 1998. One more thing, let me discuss with you. What I have realized after reading psychology for so many years and social sciences, and I often tell my students also, So we are not dealing with mathematical formulas. So unfortunately, there are very few questions for which we have yes or right, yes or no answer, correct or incorrect answer. Rather, in social sciences, including psychology, we have different explanations. So same applies here. Whether it was a negative view of religion was proposed mainly because of the clash between science and church. Whether they have already always clashed, again you will find diversity of view. According to Brooke, no, and according to Brooke and Barber, no, because sometimes science and church have also collaborated, and sometimes they were working in different areas also. There were independence. Such type of view were also expressed. Next explanation was given by Wolf. Interesting explanation in 1997. According to Wolf, it was mainly because of the approach of science which social sciences, including psychology, have also adopted. That is positivism or logical positivism. So it has attracted to psychology those who were already anti-religious, and it has repelled those who held positive view for religion. So this view have been expressed by Wolf. So in this context, I am also reminded of the view of Louisa Raine. Louisa Raine was the wife of uh, John B. Ryan, who was the founder of parapsychology, because she has said that we have stopped reading the science because it was undermining our religious beliefs. So when science became victorious in the beginning, we can say, hypothetically, I'm accepting. So all the religion were being depicted as negative. So in mainstream science also, it was depicted negatively. So when we say science, in one book which was written by Fritjof Capra, The Turning Point, they have mentioned, we can say that there are science can be divided into two parts. One, old science or classical physics or Newtonian model. Second, we can say new science or quantum mechanics. So in old science, there was a clash between science and religion, but not in new science. This is a point. In some other context, I would like to discuss. And even paranormal phenomena can also be explained with the help of new science. And there is one book, Entangled Mind, written by Radin. He has also talked about this. So what I am trying to say, when we say science, please don't misunderstand, because science can be divided into old science and new science. After Renaissance, after physical sciences, social science were developed. So social sciences, including psychology, have adopted the approach of science which was there in the physical sciences, because according to them, social phenomena can also be studied in the same way in which the natural phenomena is being studied. So this was the approach of positivism which they have adopted. Although there was one more alternative approach, the approach of the hermeneutics. So some people say that psychology have not progressed so much as it should have been, because it has not adopted the right approach of investigation. It is some of the debate. I'm not saying what is right or what is not right, what is right or what is wrong. I'm trying to simply submit that these were some of the debate or view. So according to positivism, according to Wolf, it was mainly because of the approach of positivism, which was adopted by psychology. It has repelled those persons to psychology who were religious, and it has attracted those who were anti-religious. It was the explanation given by Wolf. Now, next interesting explanation was given by Thomas Sayce. Thomas Sayce is very respected figure in the area of mental health. He had also led many movements against labeling. So those who have studied clinical psychology, they are aware. He has given very interesting explanation. His main argument I has written in the paper, which I have told you, which has been published. Unfortunately, because of the request of editor, I have simply written that because of the influence of Freud, people have adopted, psychologists have adopted anti-religious view. In fact, Thomas Sayce had said something else, which I have written in the paper, and due to the request of editor, I did not mention that. According to Thomas Sayce, that Freud deliberately had presented a negative view in the Christian world. I repeat once again, if you read Freud's writing, it appears as though he held very negative view for religion. But interestingly, in his personal life, he held respect for religious symbols, religious Jewish symbol. So according to Thomas Sayce, Sigmund Freud had deliberately proposed negative view, and mainly because of the view of Sigmund Freud, most of the people in Christian world, they have abandoned their religion, or they have become anti-religious. So the book which I had mentioned, written by Qutb, 1999, Islam and Modern Materialist Thought. According to Qutb, there are three main architects of modern materialist thought. One is Sigmund Freud, second is Karl Marx, and third is Darwin. And incidentally, two are Jews. Marx and Freud are Jews. So according to Thomas says, Sigmund Freud has deliberately presented negative view of religion. Why? Because he wanted to take revenge from Christianity because of its traditional anti-Jews view. I repeat once again, according to Thomas says, and remember also, because Thomas says is very respected figure, therefore I am sharing this view. I'm not saying it is the correct view. Remember, I'm simply sharing the view of Thomas says. He has given very interesting view, because from the writing of Sigmund Freud, it appears as though he was anti-religious, but in his personal life, he holds respect for religious symbol, Jewish religious symbol. So what does it show? That probably he was not so much anti-religious, but in his writing it appears. Why this is so? Or maybe because of other thing. Thomas says had said because he wanted to take revenge from Christianity because of its anti-Semitic view. If we think from other perspective, if some society is based on religion, so definitely Jews would not have so much right in the Christian world. And those who are aware, they say that Jews enjoy so much right. Economy and media are in their hand. So you are free to judge whether Thomas says view is correct or not. Why I have shared his view? Because he is considered very respected figure in the area of mental health. So because of this anti-religious view of psychologists or in society at large, it has negative consequences in the society because they have denied the basic spiritual nature. Why mental disorders were common in the Western world or rising in the world? There are so many explanations. One of the commonly cited explanation is because it has denied or it has rejected our basic spiritual nature. So because of this, we have faced this undesirable consequences in the form of ecological crisis and mental health problem, according to Bomister 1991 and Shoemaker 2001. So now current situation is religion is considered very positive. Now there is a division 36 of American Psychological Association which deals with the psychology of religion. There are so many articles, there are so many books. One book was written by Koenig et al. In 2001, and it was also revised in 2012. Handbook of Religion and Health. So in that book, they have summarized so many studies related to religion, spirituality, and health, both physical and mental health. So in most of the studies now we find that religion improves our physical and mental health. Most of the studies are showing that thing. Yes, there are some isolated studies which still show that no, religion has negative association with mental health. But these studies are very few. They are in minority. But 40 or 50 years back, those who held negative view for religion, such type of studies were in a large numbers. So I often ask this question: if religion has good role or bad role with our mental health, whether it improves our mental health or it lead to poor mental health. 50 years back also it should have been the same, and today also should have been the same. Then this view has been changed drastically. 40 years back, psychologists and even many people in society were taking religion very negative, and in today's world it is being considered very positively. Yes, instead of religion, some people try to use the word spirituality, and they say I am spiritual, not religious. Such type of view is also there. I don't want to discuss on that because I will be distracted from the topic. Now I want to discuss on Islamic psychology. Although I would love to answer that question if there is some question. Why this is so? Why there was division between spirituality and religion, and what is the current status? So even Western psychologists have also realized that there was some problem with mainstream psychology because it has ignored our basic spiritual nature. Yes, in this context, there is one more interesting survey. In most of the countries of the world, most of the people believe in higher power or God. There is an exception to this rule. There are some countries which are exception to this rule. And there are some countries in Western Europe, China, and Russia, where those people who believe in God, their percentage is less. Otherwise, in most of the countries of the world, most of the people believe in God or higher power. So even Western psychologists have started realizing that spirituality is something which we must try to develop, or it has positive role. They have started developing that view starting from 1970s. And some Muslim psychologists have also started realizing that. Two names, when I studied two names that commonly I find, one is of Najati, 1979. I have not read his view. Second, Malik Badri Saab, 1979. And I am very fortunate I have got a chance to interact with him. In 1979, he has written the book, The Dilemma of Muslim Psychologists. I think most of you are familiar. In which he had discussed the dilemma of Muslim psychologists. They are receiving or accepting all the theories of Western psychology uncritically. So in that, from that perspective, he has written the book, The Dilemma of Muslim Psychologists. With because of Badri view, Najati view, and so many other Muslim thinker or writer independently, they have started developing body of knowledge, which we can now call Islamic psychology. After that, there is a lot of development in that area, starting from 1980s, 1990s also. I have also seen in India, many people have started working. So they have produced a body of knowledge. I appreciate the effort of all those who have worked in that area or those who are still working in that area. Keplik and Skinner in 2017, they have published one article and they have summarized all these trends. They have studied all these things. They have really worked very hard. Skinner, I know him because he was my co-author also in the paper about which I am talking about. Keplik, he's from Germany, and I have been also impressed by him because before writing that article, they have traveled many parts of the world. They have also visited India. Paul Keplik had also visited India. He met me and he asked me to give him material. So they have really done very wonderful job. They have visited many countries. They have collected material which were based on so-called Islamic psychology. And after that, they have written one article and they have summarized that also. So according to them, what we call Islamic psychology, or all the work, what we call Islamic psychology, can be summarized into three different categories. So they have used their own terminology for that. According to them, there are three different trends in that area, and they have named them. To one trend, they have named the Islamic filter approach. To second trend, they have named the Islamic psychology approach. And to third trend, they have named the comparison approach. Although they have given in this order, but I would love to explain it from comparison approach.
Dr.
The
Naveed,
comparison approach, we can say it was the common reaction of the Muslim when they realized that Western psychology was being developed, and they have started talking about some of the concepts which they feel we can find in Islam, whether in Quran, Hadith, or writing of Muslim medieval thinkers. For example, if they have developed cognitive behavior therapy, so they have started writing cognitive behavior therapy from Islam. If they have mentioned self, so they have mentioned self from Islamic perspective, motivation, personality, or so on. They have used the terminology of Western psychology and try to find its equivalent in Islamic sources. So we can say it is a comparison approach. I have great respect for those who have worked in that area. At least they have produced some body of knowledge. But according to Keplik and Skinner, in the beginning, it is good that we are producing this type of knowledge. But in the long run, we cannot provide a strong alternative to the mainstream psychology. So it cannot be developed as a separate paradigm or perspective. No doubt it is useful. But in the long run, it has limited value. Now, second approach, we can say the Islamic filter approach, which was also proposed by Malik Badri Saab. According to him, any knowledge which is coming from Western psychology, or psychology, we must test this from Islamic sources, because there are some view which are similar to or which matches with the Islamic knowledge or Islamic framework. But there are some knowledge which does not match it. So there are some knowledge which is un-Islamic or anti-Islamic, and unfortunately, some of us are propagating it without knowing that it is anti-Islamic or un-Islamic. So according to Badri, we have to test whether it matches with the Islamic conception or not. If it matches, we will accept. If it does not match, we will not accept. It is known as the Islamic filter approach. The third approach, which Keplik and Skinner has labeled the Islamic psychology approach, they have advocated to develop that approach. And incidentally, independent with the discussion of the Skinner, I also held same view. Because what I commonly say, that instead of fitting in Quran in the terminology of the Western psychology, we must try to focus on the Quran and Hadith and try to derive terminology and use that. For example, instead of using the terminology of Western psychology, such as motivation, I call it hypothetical or artificial term, personality, motivation, self, and so on. We must try to focus on Quran and Hadith and try to derive terminology from there. So if we will focus on Quran and Hadith, so which terminology we will use? We will use qalb, nafs, fuad, fitra, so on. We will use this term, and accordingly we try to develop that. Although there is a work in all these three areas, but in this area which they have suggested, we must focus on that. There is a limited work or very few attempt. Why it is limited? Because it is the most difficult challenge to develop this approach. I personally feel it is very difficult work, and only very few people can work in that area. First thing, what I feel personally, that work in all these three different will continue to be developed, because some people will still use this approach, the Islamic filter approach. Still other people will use the comparison approach, and some people will use the Islamic psychology approach. This Islamic psychology approach, those who will try to develop this, they will be limited. They will be very few. Because why they will be very few? According to me and some other people also, it requires some additional type of learning also. Because I personally feel that we all have been trained in one particular trend or frame of mind. We need to transcend these boundaries if we want to develop that. And I am also of the opinion that when we try to develop that, gradually this field will become multidisciplinary. I believe that no doubt all people can work. But those who will be recognized authority in this area, it will be those who will be developing that. And they must have 4 different characteristics.
Dr. Naveed, sorry,
Yes.
just some of the participants they don't see the PowerPoint slide. They are requesting if you can do full screen in presentation mode. Is it possible? Because I'm not so much techno-savvy, in this I have written only pointer. I would like to share with them my article, published article. Okay. No, they just wanted to, if it's because there is a pointer and there are so many things which I am speaking, which is not written in the slide also. Okay, I understand. I just some of the participants requested
this thing is spontaneously come to my mind, and it is not in the slide which I have prepared. Okay, no problem. But could you press the presentation mode on the PowerPoint, because then it will be easier to see, I think. I am not myself that tech savvy with PowerPoint. I use Google presentation. Shift F5. If you could press Shift F5. Shift and 5. Shift F5. Let's see if that works. Did it work? Do we have any PowerPoint expert? You go to view. My son has just left. He is good in that. Unfortunately, I'm not, because I'm not techno savvy. I understand. What I will do, I will share you go to the view. You can share this PowerPoint, but in PowerPoint there is a pointer. They're saying that it is a little icon at the bottom of the monitor. So there is a little icon in the bottom.
Syed Jamaluddin, yes, you go to the view. You go to the view. Yes. You go to the view option up top. On top, you have file, home, insert.
Oh, yes. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
This is good.
Okay. Jazakallah khairan, doctor. Sorry for interrupting you. Thank you. So I was saying that those who want to work in the area of Islamic psychology and especially want to focus on Islamic psychology, I personally feel that those who are having this knowledge,
Because I feel, first thing, all the people will work in this area, which we can say that there are three trends. Comparison approach will also be there. Filter approach will also be there. Islamic psychology approach will also be there. I personally feel that those who will work in so-called Islamic psychology, where they will try to develop alternative view, where we can challenge that we have developed something which can become alternative to mainstream psychology, I think they will be very few. Why they will be very few? Because it requires different type of expertise and knowledge also, much knowledge also. So personally, I feel, it's my personal opinion, you are free to disagree. First, I feel that those who have knowledge of mainstream psychology, not limited knowledge, all the trends of mainstream psychology or scientific psychology, because they are very useful also. And we can also utilize in developing Islamic psychology. Second, not only the knowledge of mainstream psychology, they must also be aware of the limitation of mainstream psychology. And they must know what alternative views have been developed in Western psychology, such as indigenous psychology, transpersonal approach, constructive approach, and so many other approaches. Third, knowledge of the work of medieval thinkers, Muslim medieval thinkers, because they have also written a lot. And Al-Balkhi Institute also in that connection also. And fourth and most important, knowledge of the Quran and Hadith. So I'm not saying that they require some special course, because I feel there are some Muslims who regularly read Quran and Hadith, and they can reach their knowledge to an acceptable level. So it will be sufficient. For those who have not sufficient knowledge of Islamic sources, I think they can collaborate with those who have knowledge of Islamic sources. So gradually I am feeling it will become multidisciplinary, this area. So let me come back to this point. So why, what challenges we are facing in developing Islamic psychology? Although I appreciate, I respect the work of all those who have worked in the area of Islamic psychology. And Kaplik and Skinner have categorized them into three different categories, and they have called it three different trends. But despite the work of more than 40 years, there is an apparent lack of progress. Many thinkers, though many of those who are working in Islamic psychology, they have realized themselves. Second, no doubt, work of the Muslim medieval thinker is very useful. We must use them. And in the one of the condition I have mentioned, that Muslims must be aware, those who want to study in the area of Islamic psychology, they must be aware of the work of the medieval Muslim thinker. Yes, one more thing. When I have mentioned that these four conditions, so I feel that those who fulfill these four conditions, they will become the recognized authority of this field. I'm not saying that they can work in this area. Anyone can work even without having sufficient knowledge of psychology or without having sufficient knowledge of Islam. But those who fulfill these four conditions which I have mentioned, I am of the opinion they will become the recognized authority of this area or of this field, or they will be able to develop the Islamic psychology paradigm. So those who are working in this area, most of them have focused on the work of Muslim medieval thinker. No doubt, work of Muslim medieval thinker are useful, but it will not help us if we are using it as it is, without giving some other debate. In next slide, I will explain it. So why we are not able to develop Islamic psychology as an alternative paradigm? Because most of the authors have focused mainly on the work of Muslim medieval thinker, or they have used the comparison approach. I am repeating again and again, I respect, I value the work of Muslim medieval thinker, but I don't want to present it as it uncritically, just like the Quran. For me, Quran is most important primary. Yes, in part, we can use the knowledge of or work of the Muslim medieval thinker, but primary source will be Quran and Hadith. This is my argument, or this is my contention. Next, what is my contention? Instead of focusing or basing our main work on Muslim medieval thinker, we must focus on Quran and Hadith. We can use the work of Muslim medieval thinker in part or in elaborating that or in the development of psychology also. It is useful. Yes, one clarification. I have great respect for them. Their work has great application in the area of therapy and counseling. Ghazali model, Balkhi, and so many other people's model are being utilized, and it is also very effective in treating. I have great respect for them. But I'm speaking from the perspective of developing a paradigm. So in last part, I will discuss when we develop a paradigm, what type of debate we need to discuss. Because of that, I want to focus on Quran and Hadith, drive principle or concept from them. We can use the medieval thinkers writing in part. Why I don't want to focus mainly on the work of Muslim medieval thinker, at least there are 3 arguments which comes to my mind. No doubt their work is significant and they have written so much important thing. There may be something which will be applicable in all the time to come. But some of their writing may reflect hypothetically or theoretically the product of that particular culture or socio-cultural reality. Because there are some concept of Islam or Quran which people in different time have understood differently. And second most important, when these Muslim medieval thinkers were developing or writing, that time they used to relate their writing with the view of Aristotle. No doubt, there are some Muslim thinkers who have written independent of them and it was their original writing. But some thinkers have tried to relate with Aristotle. Aristotle was considered the first master and you will find the impact of that also in some of the writing of the Muslim medieval thinker. Second important thing, because if we want to develop paradigm, which can be acceptable to non-Muslim also. In Muslim, it's very easy. You talk about Islamic psychology, Islam, all the people will accept. But when we have to discuss, when we have to debate, and when we want to propagate it among non-Muslim, at least we must try to develop it in today's debate, in today's parlance, because they were discussing in the terminology of Aristotle. We need to discuss in the terminology of science, modern science, and paradigm. So when we say paradigm, although when we say paradigm, so it has certain assumption, philosophical assumption, ontological assumption, epistemological assumption, and in that line, there is a methodological issue. Unfortunately, those who have written on Muslim medieval thinker, such type of debate is not apparent there. So it is the second reason. Because what was their ontological position, or they are assuming ontological position was the same, and what was their epistemological position. Third, we feel that it was the work of Muslim medieval thinker, so it should be based on Islam. Unfortunately, there was some Muslim thinker who were impressed by Aristotle and some other. We can say that their writing were not strictly within Islam, such as Ibn Rushd. Some of his concepts, we can say it was not based on Islam. And I'm not saying some thinker have already written, and I have mentioned it in my paper. So it is, I have mentioned, ideal requirement to work in that area. Next, when we say psychology and we are doing research, so unfortunately, some of us are not aware that there are different research traditions. And each tradition has certain assumptions which are rarely made explicit. They are conducting some study and they are not realizing on which assumption they are based, what limitation it has. So what I'm trying to say, research paradigm in Western social and behavioral sciences can be useful in developing Islamic psychology, because at least we must be aware of our assumption, different assumption, because each paradigm differs from others on the basis of ontology, epistemology, axiology, rhetoric. These are 2 other terms which entered later on. Rhetoric, especially axiology. So these are all the some of the terms, and in this line we must discuss. But unfortunately, there is no consensus about the main research paradigm, and different researchers, name different research paradigm. To name a few, for example, McKenzie and Knight, 2006, they have suggested that there are 4 research paradigms in social sciences or behavioral sciences, including psychology. They are positivist, oblique post-positivist, because after positivism, especially in new science, those who are working in new science, they have challenged some of the assumption of the old science. So in old science, there is a strict cause and effect, certainty. But in post-positivism, they also talk about probability, uncertainty also, slightly different. In that paper, briefly, I have mentioned. Next is interpretivist and constructivist approach. Next, transformative and pragmatic. Chilisa I have mentioned, Chilisa 2011, positivist, post-positivist, interpretivist, constructivist, transformative, and post-colonial indigenous paradigm. Shannon and Baker have mentioned pragmatism, transformative, emancipation, dialectic, and critical realism. So in that, I have written only those research paradigms, briefly I have mentioned, which can be utilized in the development of Islamic psychology. Because I wanted to make it lengthy section, but editor has suggested me to reduce that part, cut that part, because I wanted it the paper which other can utilize to know about the research paradigm. But despite having the knowledge of all these research paradigm of Western social and behavioral sciences, there are some problems which we cannot study. Before that, all these research paradigm are useful in studying different type of problem, and in Islamic psychology we can utilize that. But despite having the knowledge of all these research paradigm of Western behavioral and social sciences, some of the phenomena we cannot study. For example, we know that Allah gives sakina to some of the people, especially those who are mindful of his connection. We feel that Allah is connected to us. Allah can guide us. And sometimes when we ask to Allah, Allah also answer our prayer also. So Allah can also change the thinking of the person. So for this, I have used the word transcendence, because I have said this transcendental aspect cannot be studied by using the paradigm, research paradigm or research perspective of the Western social and behavioral sciences. No doubt in transpersonal psychology they try to study, but again they are using the paradigm of positivist approach, which is based on materialism, unfortunately, because it negates that which they try to study. So we need, I personally feel that we need to develop some paradigm which include transcendence, or we can include it in the existing paradigm which is common in the Western research tradition, such as positivism or post-positivism or critical realism. Because there may be some Muslim medieval thinker, they might have developed some research method, something like that. I am not aware. This is the next area which I want to work. So personally, I feel knowledge of Western paradigm, research paradigm can be utilized. If we want, at least we can understand what limitation it has. So unfortunately, we fill questionnaire, get information, finding based on that, and we feel that it is the objective knowledge, it is full proof. We are not aware of the limitation. So therefore, I suggest, I advocate the knowledge of that. But despite having knowledge of that, all these phenomena cannot be studied. In Islamic psychology, we need to go beyond that, especially to study the influence of Allah on our thinking and so many other things. Although it should not be the focus, but on some topic, it can be studied. So with this, I end. So if you have any question, I would love to answer. Thank you so much.
Jazakallah khairan, Ustad Naveed, Dr. Naveed. Round of applause, please, dear brothers and sisters and excellent colleagues from all over the world. Let's give some digital applause. Thank you so much for a very enriching and enlightening lecture. Gave us a lot of thoughts and reflections to further develop and to further discuss. And we have some questions for you, Dr. Naveed, from our excellent participants. So I'll start by collecting some of them. And dear brothers and sisters, please feel free to write your questions in the chat as well. And because we have a good amount of time still, so we can ask several questions, inshallah. So feel free. So the first question, Dr. Naveed, is from Muhammad Sinan. He is asking, how can someone claim to be spiritual without religion?
In fact, we need to understand the background, why such type of work enter in our day-to-day language. In Western world, especially USA, many people were abandoning their established religion, that is Christianity, but they were not materialist. They were feeling concern for others and so many other things, which usually spiritual people can have. So in that context also, Abraham Maslow had, suggested, or he had advocated that spiritual concerns would be pursued outside of established religion. Because of this and because of the negative behavior of religious people. I'm sorry to use this expression. There are some so-called religious people, but unfortunately, they indulge in so many immoral things. So because of the negative behavior of some religious people, and because of the atheist people, some people who feel no, beyond materialism, we have some concern for others, something like that, which we can club under spirituality. Before that, one more thing also, I think it will be, clarify further. So when we say religion and spirituality, the first classic work in psychology, because study in the area of religion and spirituality have done in sociology, psychology, theology, and so many other things. Remember, I'm speaking from psychology perspective. So we can say that the classic work was written by William James, The Variety of Religious Experiences. And he has mentioned also Imam Ghazali, that it was the most honest expression of his. He has included his autobiography, that it was the honest expression of seeing something like that. So it was the beginning, we can say, of psychology of religion. It was written in around 1901 or 2, because at different places there are different dates. Although work in the area of religion has started much earlier, during 1890s, Stanley Hall and his two students, Starbuck and Leuba. But usually we can say the first classic work in the area of religion, psychology of religion, is the classic work written by William James, The Varieties of Religious Experience. So in that book, he has given two meanings of the word religion. One, religion as an institutional meaning, and second, religion as an individual meaning. As an institution, religion is a set of beliefs, practices, mode of worship, ritual, and so on. We can say it is religion, meaning of religion as an institution. Second, he has given the meaning of religion as an individual meaning or private meaning or personal meaning. Because all of us, those who are religious, sometimes they feel as though they are connected to Allah. Allah is having his mercy on him, something like that. And they feel that they are being connected to higher power. Whatever name you give, Allah, whatever name you give. When you feel you are connected to some higher power, there is some other higher power. He has used the personal meaning of religion for that. But what happened in Western society? With time, these two terms got separated. The institutional meaning of religion taken by William James, some psychologists or people have started saying that it is a religion, and the personal meaning people have started saying that it is the spirituality. So it got diversified, and in the meantime, Abraham Maslow had also expressed this view that spiritual concern could be pursued outside of established religion. So after that, some people have started saying, I'm spiritual, but not religious. And during that period of time, some people have started saying that religious understanding can be impediment to spiritual understanding. That if you are religious, it will block your spiritual growth. Some people have started saying something. So in plain word, there are some people who want to be spiritual without any established religion, but there are some people who say that I am religious as well as spiritual, and I am also one of them. I want to be spiritual through a religion, especially Islam. So I hope I have answered the question.
That was a great explanation and very thorough. And actually, Dr. Naveed, and to all of our brothers and sisters joining this lecture today, the next lecture actually with Dr. Fatima Abdallah will go into the differentiation between Islamic spirituality and secular spirituality. So this is actually a good question to have with us for upcoming lectures. So Brother Muhammad, feel free to join next lecture as well. Barakallahu feekum, Ustad. So we have
because
sisters...
in Islamic spirituality, Allah will be focused in spirituality.
Exactly,
no Allah.
exactly. Great explanation, Doctor. Jazakallah khairan. So we'll go now to Sister Sumaya B. She is asking, Assalamu alaikum, Professor Iqbal. Inshallah, once we develop a theory of Islamic psychology, do you believe that Western psychological techniques can be incorporated in therapeutic work from a perspective of Islamic psychology?
I think before that, if people ask whether this technique can be utilized, it will be effective or not, we need to understand how therapy works. Because personally, I'm not in favor. If Islam, because if there is some principle of Islam and this view of psychologists, Western psychologists contradict, then I will not take. But if it does not contradict and technique can be utilized, I will use it. But we also need to understand how therapy works, because all the therapies, whatever you are using, people claim that it works, it is producing results. So we need to understand how therapy works. So there are two broad explanations. One explanation is known as empirical or scientific explanation. There is one word, so I think empirical, something like that. Sorry, evidence-based. And second is known as common factor approach. Evidence-based approach say that we have developed something scientific, and by the application of it, we are producing results. Common factor approach say when therapist and client meet. So in addition to the technique which they are applying, therapist is applying, there are number of factors which are playing the role, which produce the result. And remember the therapy of Carl Rogers. According to Carl Rogers, in the therapeutic outcome, technique is less important. What is more important? Relationship between client and therapist, and which should have 3 different characteristics. So there are so many books written by Comer. So roughly, according to latest, if I do not explain it further very briefly, taken together all the studies, technique plays a role only 15%. In some of the studies, you can find this latest survey in the book written by Comer, Abnormal Psychology. Although techniques are also important, common factors are also important. So roughly they have given the percentage. Technique is contributing, taken together all the studies, only 15%. So unless we understand what factors are playing role, so we cannot become good therapists or good counselor also. So I will advise those who want to understand. First thing, my reaction, yes, if there is any view, anything which do not contradict Islam, I will accept it. But most often, if it contradicts, I will not. Second, we need to understand how therapy works. Because here, I think some of us lack. I don't know about other, I was lacking, and in the meantime, I have tried to read that. And by the grace of Allah, now I'm familiar, how does it work, and many new studies I have read. So unfortunately, some people do not have critical examination of all these studies. You use any technique, even past life regression. Some people believe that there are multiple cycles of birth and death, and they are using past life regression, and from this approach also, they are showing the result also. So there was one book, Many Lives and Many Masters, written by Weiss, something like that, and they oftenly quote, and they are giving explanation. So I told them that I can give point by point rebuttal or counter explanation of the view of the Weiss, which he has given in support of the past life. Past life means that we are in the cycle of birth and death. In some societies, in Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, it is common. And they are also using Brian Weiss book, Many Lives, Many Masters, in support of that. So we need to understand and we need to study critically.
Barakallahu feekum, Ustad. Barakallahu feekum. Thank you so much. I hope that Sister Sumaya, you got the answer that you wished for, inshallah. There's a lot of questions here, so we'll take some more. Sister Fatima Ghani, she's asking, Dr. Naveed, is there any tool to measure the religiosity of a client?
Because when we say tool, so strictly we are talking about positivist approach. So it depends which approach we will study. Yes, if you want, yes, it is also useful. Positivist approach, yes, we can develop, but the limitation of the positivist approach will be inherent there. What I try to convey, when we develop tool, it is based on the positivist and post-positivist assumption. So interestingly, it denies the religion or higher power. It is based on materialist thought. Although in principle, they claim we have adopted the stance of scientific naturalism or academic agnosticism. But in practice, it is materialism, atheistic view. Approach is atheistic. We are trying to convey non-material thing. So it is contradiction. Yes, we can study religion with the help of tool, religiosity, but it will have that inherent limitation.
Yeah, I agree, actually. And it's been a wide variety of discussions regarding, assessment tools for religiosity. And those that I found is actually very secular and materialistic, as you say. So, yeah.
Same thing I'm saying, because it's secular.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. MashaAllah, barakallah feekum. Ustad, we have Abdul Qayyum, who is asking, one, is it possible to incorporate these research approaches into traditional madrasa and jamia curriculum, and what needs to be done to achieve this? So we'll start with the first question there.
Sorry, brother, I could not follow the first part. Can you repeat it, please?
Of course, doctor. Is it possible to incorporate these research approaches into traditional madrasa and jamia curriculum, and what needs to be done to achieve this?
Frankly, I have not seen their syllabi, so I cannot comment. But I think there it is not much required. It is required in academic institution where we are conducting research based on these traditions. Because they require some other type of, because we are conducting research, because they must focus on Quran, Hadith, yes, new interpretation they must use. But yes, when they are conducting research, if they have some research point of view, then I think new approach, what I say, that influence of Allah in some topic, for some topic, it is required. I think they need to develop something new. They must not rely solely on that.
MashaAllah. Actually, we have some comments in the chat. Ustada Zuhal, a great colleague of us from ISIP Turkey, and Al-Balkhi, she's saying that the field of psychology of religion has a wide range of religiosity measures. Interesting. So, Ustada Zuhal, if you could share some of them, perhaps in the Zoom chat, or we can share it to all of the participants after us. Ustada Zuhal is very knowledgeable in this. And then Sister Shukriya is writing, Islamic psychology is in dire need to develop standardized psychometric tools in Islamic perspective. Some comments from them. Thank you, Sister Shukriya, for sharing. Thank you, Ustada Zuhal. As always, an honor. We have a question. We have a second question from Abdul Qayyim. Dr. Naveed, is about, what can you say about the work of William Chittick, especially in his book, Science of Cosmos, Science of the Soul?
Sorry, can you repeat? Work of?
William Chittick. So he's asking, what can you say?
I have not read that work.
Okay. No, khalas, then I'm sorry, Abdul Qayyim. If somebody else has written, please write in the chat. Perhaps you can get some feedback from there. We go to Jawdat Tawqir, is asking, positive psychology technique that is mindfulness, how can we elaborate or implement in terms of Islamic psychology?
Because I have already said, instead of taking mindfulness and try to integrate it, I do not, suggest or advocate that approach. Although it is common and it will be continued to be used, but I do not advocate. Usually, I suggest something we must try to develop from Islam, because I have read some view. Some try to use some meditation technique from Islam, some transpersonal view from Islam, cognitive behavior therapy. I personally say that if we will focus on Quran, in fact, all these components will be there. Behavioral component will also be there. Cognitive component will also be there. Transpersonal component will also be there. And what we call this constructive approach, something like that, it will also be there. So it will be integrated, something like that. In one paper long back, I have written that most of the view or concept of psychology are fragmented. They are incomplete and fragmented. In psychology, we will have a kind of integrated approach. So instead of, if my personal standard, instead of focusing on mindfulness, I will try to develop something from psychology, from Islam. Sorry. So in Islam, all these components will be there. So some people have written, I think, very good work also, how stress can be managed, how therapy can be provided from Islam. And I think they have done some good work. So I will not try to use the term mindfulness. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for a thorough answer, Dr. Naveed. Actually, I was thinking about the 6 M's of Imam Ghazali, the 6 steps of self-purification, Dr. Naveed. That could be a great tool to use, like when he speaks about musharata, muraqaba, muhasaba, mujahada, and mu'aqaba. And we have so both in, as you say, in the Quran and the Sunnah, but also some of the great scholars have also contributed to our form of, as you say, mindfulness or tafakkur. So barakallahu feekum. Thank you. Let's see if we have more questions here. Yeah, Abdul Qayyim is also asking, how do the pure sciences influence both mainstream psychology as well as Islamic psychology?
Can you repeat, please, once again?
Of course, Ustad. How do the pure sciences influence both mainstream psychology as well as Islamic psychology? I actually don't know pure sciences, what Abdul Qayyim means.
Because I can understand, because sometimes what happens, if we ask lay people about religion and science, they feel that religious is a belief. It should be confined to personal level also. Science is something which is objective, foolproof, something like that. If some scientific explanation there, it is final, it should be accepted. But unfortunately, in reality, it is not there. There was one famous scientist, Heisenberg. I will come to this point, Heisenberg, and there was a famous debate between Einstein and him. God does not play dice. And ultimately that debate was won by Heisenberg. He was a very great scientist. About science, he has said, common people feel that science will tell us true reality. Heisenberg, the great scientist, who also defeated in one of the debate to Einstein, he has said that science can never provide us true reality. Please mark my word, what he has said. Science can never provide us true reality. At the most, it is approximation. So he has said long back, I'm not denying the importance of science. Remember, what I'm saying, when we use the word science, we must advocate it, and Muslims have developed all the science during that period of time. But at the same time, we must be aware of the limit of its limitation. This is my point of discussion on. I repeat once again, according to Heisenberg, science can never provide us exact reality or true reality. At the most, it is approximation. So when we say science, so in fact, we can say that there are two parts of science. One is old science. Old science is also known as old physics or Newtonian model. And remember the context, before psychology became scientific or independent, before that physical sciences were developed. So there was some assumption in science, or there was development in science, and their assumption were there in the physical sciences. The same model we have adopted in social sciences, including psychology. Unfortunately, after that, there was a, there was no contact with science. What development was taking place in science? Gradually, the scientists themselves realized that some of the assumption of the old science is not applicable in some situation. In fact, they have challenged some of the assumption. To quote some of them, in old science, now including in psychology, because it is based on those assumptions, there was a lot of focus on objectivity. Again, it was the epistemological position when I have used. Epistemological position means they assume that reality is outside the person. Whereas other approaches such as interpretivists, they feel that reality is included in the act of the perceiving. So I repeat, there was a lot of focus on objectivity. But in new science, what they say, pure objectivity is a myth. I repeat, no doubt they try to be objective as much as possible. But now new science realize that pure objectivity is a myth. One reality we are seeing from our naked eyes. So here Newtonian model holds true by and large. It explains so many things. And all this scientific development, computer, it is based on that. But when phenomena is being studied at atomic and subatomic level, suppose I'm Naved Iqbal, physically you are seeing me, but I'm Naved Iqbal is composed of different atoms. So when phenomena is being studied at atomic and subatomic level, then we find some other reality which cannot be explained by all science principle. So for this, I'm using the word. No doubt, all science has been not rejected, but its limitation we have found, that it explained the phenomena only along a certain range. Beyond that range, it failed to explain phenomena, and especially when phenomena are being studied at atomic and subatomic level. So now in old science, there was a most focus on certainty, cause and effect. In new science, they also talk about probability in terms of probability. They say uncertainty is also there. There is not so much focus on certainty. So there are some of the changes which in science is there. But unfortunately, most of us lay people feel that science, basic science, certainty, objectivity, in fact, in reality, it is not there. And great scientist, Heisenberg himself had said that thing. I hope I have answered your question.
MashaAllah, barakallah fikum. Great answer and great question, by the way. Jazakallah khairan. Very interesting. We have some concrete questions. We have 8 minutes left. With your permission, if it's okay, we'll take two, 3 more questions. Awataf Therapy Room is saying, how can I be part of Islamic psychology if I don't have background in psychology? That is the question.
So I have already mentioned that anyone can be part of it. For condition, I have mentioned for those only who will become the leader of this area. Anyone can be part of this. And mashallah, in India, there are some non-Muslim who have become the part of that.
Mashallah. Yeah, I think that if you want to work clinically, it's good to have a clinical education, like to be a counselor or to be like a clinical psychologist before. So I know that, for instance, the IAIP, they recommend that, and also some of the other programs recommend that. And also as ISIP, we also recommend everybody who wants to work with it to clinically to have a proper clinical educational background, whether it's a counseling background, education, or something like that. So we have here Dr. Naveed Salman Hassan, our brother. He is from India as well. is writing, why is it so necessary for Islamic psychology or Muslim psychologists to construct a model to conduct therapy, as there was no such thing in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the Sahaba?
How should I react? I fail to understand. Okay, let me try. Because unfortunately, with time, the meaning of religion has become narrow or rigid or very limited. During the time of Prophet, it was said, seek knowledge, whether it is in China, be it in China. And you will find just after Prophet, or even in the lifetime of Prophet, there was a lot of scientific development which took place in Muslim world. So I usually say, when Muslims were following the Quran, they were excelling in all the field of the world, including knowledge, scientific development. You will be surprised to know most of the scientific development were done by the Muslim. And unfortunately, after Renaissance or during Renaissance, some of their work have been propagated by European from their own name. So I often say the first mental hospital in the world established in Baghdad. You will find in one of the book of Abnormal Psychology and Modern Life. And some of the innovation or development of Muslim work they have propagated from their own name. For example, if we talk about blood circulation, the name is Harvey. In fact, it was Ibn Nafis. Pulmonary circulation he has discussed much before him. In the same way, there is a germ theory that microorganism can cause illness. And in this corona pandemic, this microorganism has become like anything. In fact, this microorganism theory that they attribute to the name of Louis Pasteur. In fact, long before Louis Pasteur, it was Ibn Khatib. And the word germ itself is derived from the Arabic word jarasim for microorganism. So what I'm trying to say, that most of the development of knowledge during the time of Prophet or after Prophet took place in Islamic world when they were following Quran. And you remember when during war, there are some prisoner of war. So one of the way that you teach Muslim reading and writing, and you can be freed. So what I'm trying to say, with time, unfortunately, the meaning of knowledge has been restricted, unfortunately, and there are so many reasons. So Islam advocates so much knowledge. So now we are scientists also. There are so many Muslim scientists or surgeons. Whether Prophet was surgeon, if I ask this question. So many Muslim were astronomers. Whether they were Prophet was astronomers. Because Prophet himself have said there was some hadith. You propagate to people, probably they will understand it better. So what I'm trying to convey, Islam encourage us to seek knowledge or develop knowledge. But unfortunately, with time, we have restricted the meaning of the word religion. And this was the cause of our downfall. So when Muslims were following the Quran, that time they were superior in all the field. They were excelling in all the field, in fact, including the scientific field. All the scientific development took place in the Western world. And this old Renaissance in the Europe, it was because of the writing of the Muslim medieval thinker. And Ibn Sina's work, The Canon of Medicine, for more than 500 years, it was the prescribed text in some of the Europe's medical colleges. We had so much great past. When we were following the Quran. Same thing I advocated. We have again to focus on the Quran. Only then we can progress. Not only in this world, in the hereafter also. So Allah has kept our, falah, our progress only with Quran. But unfortunately, we read Quran only for earning sawab, without understanding what Quran say about. And unfortunately, most of us have become manipulated. Most of our thinking have become un-Islamic and anti-Islam. So if we connect to Allah, best way is through Quran. And again, we will see miracle inshallah, as we had seen in the past. So therefore, I suggest this approach.
MashaAllah, Dr. Navi. That's such an important notion that you're mentioning. Barakallahu feekum. And actually, it's also important to mention the hadith of hikmah. There is a hadith where, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he speaks about, wisdom being the lost property of the believer, and wherever he finds that he needs to use it, So, I mean, there is so much, hadith that are speaking about, be curious, and try to look at other traditions as well. I mean, And that's what as you say, the scholars did. But they were also, as I understand, Dr. Naveed, very rooted in their own identity. They knew their Islam, they knew their heritage, they knew their Quran, they knew their Sunnah. So I think that in this day and age, we live in a day and age of dissonance. We live in a day and age of confusion.
Only one thing, we have large number in the world, but we are being humiliated everywhere. So why this is so? Because we are not connected to Quran or Allah.
Exactly.
This is the only reason. Everywhere, inshallah, we will progress.
Inshallah.
Including academic field, scientific field.
Inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. So with that said, we have a last question, but it's a long question. So I'll try to summarize it a little bit here. So Sister Saira, mashallah, our sister from US and from Pakistan, she has 2 questions. So, wow. Based on your comparative analysis of paradigms already available and those being developed in Islamic psychology currently, please shed light on transformative aspect, spirituality and religiosity outside of therapy.
Outside therapy, because I personally believe if religion has influence, this influence will be everywhere. When mainstream psychology have proposed anti-religious view, especially in cognitive behavior therapy, you will find they have suggested that we will not discuss the ethical issue, religious issue. Religious ethical is private. In fact, they were developing their own ethics, because long back I used to go on TV discussion. With due respect to those who are listening, there may be some female, I don't know how they will react to it. One question is often asked that we had sex, should we do it outside marriage or with other person? So all these Western trend therapists, they are suggesting as long as both are willing, there is no problem. In fact, they are developing their own moral. And they say that we need not to develop moral. This is the problem there. Really, influence of religion will be everywhere. It is not only within the therapy or outside therapy. Within therapy, we will not discuss. In fact, it is all the religious issues with which client come forward or with which they have problem. It is the religious issues or so-called moral issues. Let me use the word moral issues. Some of these, if not all, some of these issues are moral issues. But these Western trained scientists who advocate negative view towards religion, they try to develop their own, this moral. What is their moral? You can have sex anywhere as long as you are, as long as both are willing, because you are mature, you are adult. In fact, it is anti-religious thing which we are doing. Why we will not discuss religion in therapy? Because some of these issues are religious. So this thing I am trying to convey, that we have to focus on Islam, and all these things, whether it is within therapy or outside therapy, religion will have influence. Sorry, I thought it is Indian audience. I started speaking in my own language. It is not there that Allah will not be there in therapy session. It will be outside there. So when we say religion has influence, it will always be at everywhere. Moreover, some of the issues with which client come, it is moral issues. But unfortunately, this so-called Western trend, cognitive behavioral therapists say we need not to discuss, morality here. We will discuss something like that. In fact, they are developing their own moral. And some people say that it was based on the morality of Victorian era, something like that. Some authors have started writing that. They have their own notion of morality. So for me, religious issues will always be there. Yes, in some cases, in the developments of psychological problem, it is very obvious. In others, it is not so obvious. So wherever it is obvious, whether it is within the therapy, outside, it will be taken into consideration.
MashaAllah, barakallah feekum. And with that, we will end the lecture today. Barakallah feekum, Dr. Naveed. Please, everybody, brothers and sisters, excellent participants, round of applause, please, digital applause. You can also open up your camera and just do like this. Thank you so much for taking time and being so generous with your vast amount of knowledge and experience. We have benefited so much. And you have a lot of great comments in the chat as well, Dr. Naveed. People are very appreciative, and people really appreciate everything you mentioned. And it's been a great food for thought, really. Thank you so much. I also want to thank all of my colleagues once more, Sister Eileen, Sister Fatima, Sister Mariati, Sister Shireen, for doing an amazing facilitation. As always, an honor to have you all as colleagues. I want to thank all of you who joined from all over the world. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for all of your great questions. We have a lot of scholars also joining us today. We have a lot of great practitioners and clinicians joining us today. So everybody's thanking you, Dr. Naveed. And also,
thank
Dr.
you so
Naveed,
much. Thank you all for patient listening. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
have enjoyed interacting with you.
We have enjoyed as well, and we want to congratulate you for the prize you won once more in France.
Thank you so
It's
much.
an
Thank
honor.
you so much.
Yeah, it's an honor really to see that such that people are giving the credit where it's due, mashallah. So send our regards to your family, Dr. Naveed.
Thank you so much. You also.
And we wish you a great continuation of the day. And the participants are asking if they can have access to the slides, if it's okay. Is it okay to?
Yeah, sure. I can send it to you, or if you have access, you can share with them.
Inshallah, we will share it. So all great participants, brothers and sisters, we will share it with all of you, and we will send an email with it. So we're not going to take more of your time. Thank you so much, Dr. Naveed. And we hope to listen to you more. And also in Urdu. I mean, we have ISIP India and Pakistan who will be delighted to listen to you in Urdu as well, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan.
Sorry, brother. How many of you are from Pakistan? Those who are attending right now?